This episode is brought to you by Bulletproof Script Coverage, where screenwriters go to get their scripts read by top Hollywood professionals. Learn more at covermyscreenplay.com. The one thing I literally just had Chris on a couple weeks ago again because it was 25th anniversary of Writer's Journey.
And I was on the tribute.
And he's I love Chris to death. And the one thing I was talking to him about in regards to plot and character, because that's always a lot of people are like, oh, I'm plot first only. It's I'm only character based, or theme and all that. And people just try to pigeonhole themselves. But the one thing I think it was him, or I think it was another guest that I spoke to, but this concept of all the great movies, what do you remember? Do you remember the plot, or do you remember the character? Like, I vaguely remember. I've seen all the Indiana Joneses. I remember Indiana Jones. And I do remember some parts of Raiders of the Lost Ark's plot, like quote-unquote plot, but I remember Indiana Jones. So characters are what we don't identify with plot as a species. We identify with other human beings, other characters. And that's what you connect with. Like, you connect with Andy Dufresne in Shawshank. You know, the plot is fantastic, but it's all about his experience in that. Did you ever Hart chart Shawshank?
Yes, I did. Frank and I go way back. We did Frankenstein together. That was the last film he didn't direct. Frank talks about Shawshank in a very interesting way, because a lot of writers don't want to know about structure and don't want to know about. They want to be taught. They don't need it. They don't have to learn anything. Mm-hmm. And Frank says, "We'll tell you that. Hey, I wrote Shawshank in 5 weeks, but he thought about it for 8 years."
Yep.
Yes. So when he sat down to write, he had figured all of this out in his head, structurally, character-wise, where he needed a scene and why. So he did his chart in his head. Frank doesn't need my help. There's a lot of writers who do need this help. It helps a lot of threshold writers get off the dime. And I have writers from my Columbia classes that are now on directing and running companies and stuff, and they still teach the Hart chart, to their incoming writers. Shawshank is probably one of the top 10 movies
ever
on anybody's list. Yeah.
Oh, it's my number one. I mean, everyone in this.
If you look at it, it's character, but it's also incredibly well structured.
Oh, I mean,
when Gil Bellows gets shot, you had to structure that character up to that point where you could not afford to lose him, and that's the point of no return. When he's dead, all bets are off. It's
right.
A different ballgame.
Right, because we're like, he's going to get out.
There's hope. Oh, he's got a hope. There's hope, and bang, pulls you right down the chart. You're up here, going, okay, there's news. He's going to out him. He's right down here.
And then, of course, makes the villain even that much more villainous, and it completely just cements him as the absolute pure personification of evil. And by the way, that move at the end, and by the way, anyone who hasn't seen Shawshank, sorry, spoiler alerts on all this, but if he does that, and you want to talk about satisfying endings, that is a satisfying ending. Yeah. Seeing him do what he did, the what's his name, Clancy Brown's character. Get taken off, and then he's going to basically deal with whatever he was dishing out for the last 20 years himself now as a prisoner. Yeah. And then just that beautiful ending. And please tell me if this is true or not. The original ending wasn't what Frank had in mind, from my understanding. The studio executive said, no, they need to meet each other on the beach. And that was added after. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because that ending was...
I do think, well, and that's when the footage began. I mean, I don't know where they came up with that. Whether they came up with it in editing or at script stage. If my whole theory is, you should be able to figure that out in the script stage. You're always going to learn something new from the footage, but if you track that emotional journey of those two characters, they have to meet on the beach. They have.